cool. So first thing you need to know about the brain is that even though, you know, the brain is developing when you're in the womb, what's really happening when we say development in the womb, what we mean is that structurally, it is developed. So the idea is when you're born, the structures should all be there, but functionality is different. Functionality is not something that's automatically ready to go at birth. And so functionally speaking, the brain develops from the back to the front. And if you've taken an intro to psychology class, or if you can remember, I'm about to give you a pop quiz. The funny part is that this is kind of a cheat sheet, but let's see if you can do it without the cheat sheet. Which part of your brain is in the back? And try to do it without cheating. Anybody remember the back part of the brain? Which lobe? Yeah, Aisha has it. Antonia has it. Yeah, it's the occipital lobe. Okay, which if you cheated, that's okay. I'll forgive you. I forgive you. But does anyone remember then what the occipital lobe is for, primary purpose? I see somebody who private messaged me the correct answer. So I don't want to call you out, but at least one person knows the correct answer. Anybody else want to take it? Okay, Abigail's got it. So visual processing is in the back of the brain, right? The occipital lobe is for visual processing. So the first function is vision. So when you are born, vision begins to function. It's not great at first. When you are born, you only have about 10 inches worth of vision, and your vision is black and white with a teeny bit of red, and it's mostly blurry. Now, by the way, like evolutionarily, why do you think vision is only 10 inches? Like, what do you think could be like the benefit of having a 10-inch vision? Yeah, Tiana's got it. To be able to see the mom, specifically see the mom while feeding. So as you're holding the baby, this is my baby. So as you're holding the baby, so you can soothe it, or if you're holding the baby so you can feed it, like bottle feed it or breastfeed it, right? That 10-inch distance is about this much distance, right? So to be able to study mom, but also any caregiver who's holding you, study them, study their face. Babies are particularly interested in the eyes, you know, the entry point to your soul or whatever. As time goes on, vision gets better. By about 8 months or so, most children have full adult vision, meaning they can see depth, they can see color, and it's not so fuzzy anymore. The last thing to develop, so I'm not going to go through each and every single part of the brain, but the last part of the brain to start developing in function is the frontal lobe, because remember, it goes from the back to the front. And does anybody happen to remember some of the functionality of the frontal lobe? All right, I got some stuff in the chat. Logic is one of them. Decision making. Memory, not so much. Movement, not as much either. What are things that you might need to make decisions? like something that helps make a decision, starts with a J. Impulse control is one of them, by the way. Common sense. I wish we had common sense. Judgment. Yeah, judgment is in here. That was the J word I was looking for. As I grow older, I am starting to learn common sense is not very common. It's not common to have common sense. So logic, decision-making, impulse control, judgment, and I'll go ahead and add one more here, is empathy. So there are many other functions of that frontal lobe, but like I said, this is the one that no one judges you harder than a toddler. We'll get to that in a second. This is the last to develop. Does anybody have an idea at what age this begins developing? And I'd be very impressed if you knew the age. Three is a pretty good guess, but it's not 3.
Is it 5?
It's not 5. It's not 6. We're looking for a higher number.
You're your teens?
Abby's got it. Sonia's got it. It is. Aisha's got it. It is 12.
Oh.
12 years old. 12 years old until this begins. And of course, by the way, whenever I give an age in class, there's going to be individual differences. There's going to be variety. And I want to actually pause on this for a second because it's very, very, very important. All right, so I'm coming here. Whenever there's like an age that's given in developmental psychology or any field really, or whenever there's an average or a recommendation for like an age recommendation or a thing to do recommendation, like should be able to do this, like should be able to sit by 4 months. It's very, 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 very important that you guys realize that that is just an average. And averages are definitely not all encompassing, but we have a hard time wrapping our head around it. And like on paper, we can understand what an average is, but in like practice, we suck at actually understanding what it means to have an average. So the best example I can come up with to kind of help you really visualize it, is taking the average clothing size in America. So the average clothing size is like somewhere between a medium and a large, and that is the average. So if I were to say in class, like, hey, most people are medium to large, right? Think about that for a second. If that was the average, is that true? Like if I said, now everybody, all clothing should be medium to large because that is what most people are, medium to large. Would that really work for a lot of people? Right? Like think of someone who's
Not
like,
yeah,
somebody who's like extra small, right? Like, sure, they could wear a large t-shirt, but that would be super large for them, right? Or think of someone opposite who's 2XL, right? That would be so uncomfortable. They'd like be smushed into this t-shirt and maybe they wouldn't even be able to really fit. Like I have that problem sometimes where I can't get like my arms into a shirt because my arms are so fat. Right? I'm just like, then I get stuck. Right? Anybody have that experience? Just me, right? When you get stuck in a shirt, you're like, right? But still, on paper though, medium to large is the average, right? So you guys now see how that is problematic and it's not all encompassing. So I just really wanted to stress that so that when you learn about things like this in a textbook or in a future class, you always just keep that in the back of your mind. Also share it with others so they don't panic, right? Because we have all these averages, like must be able to talk by 2 years old. And if your kid doesn't, you panic. You're like, something must be wrong with them. Okay, not saying you should ignore things, but also saying, try not to panic so much. We're good? Everybody understand that? Now let's get back. Oh no, all my notes got erased. Oh man, that's what happens. I got so excited to share this information and all my notes got erased. That's just how it works. That's the luck of me. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just kind of draw it back. So as you remember, it goes like this. That is pretty terrible. Let's try that again. Right, and that magic number over here for that frontal lobe was 12. Decision making, logic, impulse control, empathy. There you go. Luckily, we got it back. All right. Now, with all of that said, there's one part of your brain, or I should say there's, one section of your brain that is born fully functioning. And that is anything that's meant for survival, right? Because think about it. You need to be able to breathe. You need to be able to have your heart pump, right? There are certain things that need to happen. You need you need to be able to blink, right? That's a reflex that's needed, or a reflex that's needed for survival. If you don't blink, you're not going to survive very long. Like, it's going to be a very uncomfortable life. So that part of the brain is basically this middle section. Okay. And I'll go ahead and kind of write it out over here. So the part of your brain that you're born with fully functioning is your brain stem and your midbrain. Fully functional at birth and does not die. Does not die. What I mean by that is does not start to, does not die. It doesn't die until you die. It doesn't die until you actually die. All right. So your brain stem and your midbrain, your breathing, your heartbeat, your blinking, all of that. But one part of it, which most people don't realize, that's part of this system, is the limbic system, which is this part. Oops. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in a different color just so you can see it a little better. So this part, this limbic system, is part of that, part of the brain that's, fully functional at birth and doesn't die until you die. Does anybody know or remember what the limbic system is all about? And it's okay if you don't remember from like intro class. Yeah, Jasmine's got it. It's the emotional part of your brain. So maybe you've heard of like the fight, flight response, fight or flight. Have you guys heard about that? Give me a thumbs up if you heard about fight or flight. Yep. So fight or flight, and by the way, it's not just fight or flight. It's fight, flight, freeze, play dead, surrender. This is part of the survival brain. And that's a very weird distinction. Like, I don't think most people realize that emotions and our emotional brain is part of our survival. Like, isn't it interesting to think about? Like, think about this. Like, the frontal lobe is not part of the survival brain. Like, being able to make, decisions isn't necessarily meaningful for survival. Okay, now it can help, right? It helps, it enhances And that's the thing, right? Because you stop and you think about it, you're like, no, I think I do need to make decisions to survive. It enhances survival. It increases your chances, but it's not necessary, right? Like if you can't make a decision on where to eat, you're not going to die, right? Like if you're like, I don't know if I should eat Chick-fil-A or if I should eat Wendy's, like, oh my gosh, right? Eventually you're just going to give in to something and you're going to eat because you have a biological need to eat. But the decision itself doesn't impact that. Is this making sense to you guys? So all that's needed for survival is your emotions and your actual reflexes, blinking, your appetite, your breathing, your heartbeat. That's it. Because of that, fully functional at birth, and it stays functional until you die. All other parts of the brain begin to die as they develop. So as they develop from back to front, that is also the order in which they die. So if vision is the first to develop, which part of your brain is the first to die? Yeah, it's the occipital lobe. First to develop, first to die. Now, I'm not saying it's a death like immediate. It's not an immediate death, but it starts to die. I mean, we're all starting to die the moment we're born. Think about that, right? The moment you're born, you began your road to death. And vision is just the first thing on the road to death. And so for those of you who've already had a large amount of death visually, you probably wear contacts or glasses.
Yeah, that's why when you get older, your vision starts to get weaker.
And naturally, even if you don't need glasses or contacts, naturally, right, your vision begins to, like, around 20, by the way, like, or maybe even sooner, around like maybe 18, 19, your vision already begins to decline. You begin to not see as clearly. Like I used to be able to read from so far away, and now I just can't. I don't have depth, right? It just slowly starts to go, slowly fizzles out. So it's not an immediate death.
And my dad was like, it's because you're always on that phone. That's why you can't see now.
And there is some truth to it. As you use it, you weaken the system. So the more you use things, the more you weaken it. And there's genetic component to it and family history, usage and overusage. Hearing, right? Hearing starts to really decline around 30 years old. I feel that because I'm in my 30s and I'm like, what? Sometimes like, huh? Like, what are you saying? If you
Don't
listen,
worry, I have bad hearing right now.
I've had some bad hearing for a long time, right? And you can make it worse by physically harming things, right? Like if you listen to loud music, right? Or my dad is a mechanic, so being in the auto shop all day long and hearing heavy tools without any ear protection. My dad like is pretty much deaf, like he can't hear a thing. And sure, he's like 60 now, but it's like he's worse off than most 60-year-olds. So there's a beauty in also knowing that this frontal lobe doesn't really begin to develop until 12, because that means you have a way longer time using this stuff to your advantage in your adult life. So it starts around 12, it ends around 30 or so. So if it ends around 30 to develop, and that was like its youth, then it needs to peak. So it'll peak around like 40 or 50, and then it'll begin its slow decline. So that's, I don't know, that I think that's cool. So that's like an overview, like a meta view of brain development in infancy and a little bit beyond infancy. But what's even cooler, and that only happens in the first year of life, is something called synaptogenesis. And you see here, even when you're born, you're still not really connecting to anything because you haven't had any experiences yet, right? You literally just came into the world. But notice this rapid growth, right? So in 3 months, you guys see like how this one, and this is just one neuron, okay? This one neuron in the middle here. You see how it started to try to create synapses with a bunch of neurons down here? Let me erase some of my drawing here so you can. Okay, so that's 3 months in as the baby starts to have some life experience. And life experience for a baby just means that they're rolling around, they're kicking, they're attempting to like discover their hands. It's really cool if you stop and just observe a baby, like when they're like looking at their hands and they like realize that they have a hand, they're like, whoa. Right, and they're like surprised by it. That surprise is their brain creating a connection between the neurons. And notice how in just 6 months, this one neuron has exploded in its connections. Do you guys see like this clear transformation between these two images? Am I the only one blown away? But I'm like, holy shit, it's amazing. It's pretty cool, right? So, you know, by 2 years old, you have an overabundance. You have an overabundance of like synapses available, right? So it's like all these neurons making friends, making connections, and just kind of like waiting for the opportunity to connect. So what does that look like, right? It looks like the baby, you know, touched a cup. And notice how many things are involved with touching a cup, right? I have 5 fingers. I have the palm of my hand, right? I have the grip and the muscle that had to be part of that holding of a cup. All of these are input. And by the way, it's not, you know, for the palm of my hand, it's every little piece of my hand has neurons, right? So you have to imagine that just holding this cup is sending something like 5 billion messages to the brain, telling your brain there's something here in my hand. And so for every connection, like every finger is creating an abundance of those connections. Now, why do you think your brain would do that in such an extreme way within the first year of life? An extension a bit. It slows down in your 2nd year, but pretty much by the time you're 2, you have the most neuron connections you'll ever have in your entire life. So what's the purpose of that?
Because it's a new experience for them. They're just experiencing it. That's why it might be an abundance of the neurons.
Yeah, so one reason, right, is because everything's pretty much a new experience. Right? And so your brain is like excited to use itself, right? It's like, whoa, I have functionality, let me use it. So that's one reason. What's another reason for an overabundance?
Maybe is it because like they've learned so many things, like their brain is like trying to like piece everything together, like he said, like, oh my God, look, I have hands, like, oh, I have feet too. Oh my God, what is that? Like they try to wonder so many things, so the brain is like, calm down, slow down. Let me
Yeah.
put this in like boxes so that you can remember them.
Yeah. So this is the beginning of your brain like compartmentalizing things. It can't, in a way, it's almost like it can't keep up with its own wonder. Right? It's like, okay, connection, I'll get to that. Like, don't, like somebody in the back, like a little secretary is like, sir, I think we already have this connection. And then like the CEO is like, no, hold on. I don't know. We don't have time to check if we have a connection. Let's just make a connection. You know, you guys see how that could be? Like, it's just such an overexpression of experience. And it's better to have an overabundance than an underabundance. right? It's better to have 10,000 connections than no connection at all. So your brain at this point of life is just simply trying to keep up with all the wonder and all the new, and doesn't have time to kind of have a secretary moment. Like there's no time for an audit, like a brain audit, to like come in and like see like, wait, are we just making 10 copies of the same connection? Ivory says remembering things and being able to adapt to the environment. Yeah. So that's one part of this, okay? But so on the one hand, while the brain's creating an overabundance of things, on the other hand, this is the critical period for programming the first parts of life and the first parts of experience. So remember, we were talking earlier about like language. It's a use it or lose it at this stage of brain development. So if a child has never heard word, like the caregiver is there with them, but they've never like taken the time to, this is why reading books is so important, like reading books, talking to them. Like a lot of people find it strange to talk to an infant because the infant doesn't talk back, right? So you're like, why would I talk to them? There's nothing to talk about. But no, it's crucial that you talk to the kid and you talk to them almost nonstop all day long, so that they begin to build connection for language, and they begin to be able to hear certain sounds and to decipher the kind of nuances between different sounds. This is especially important if you want your child to learn different languages. They need to be able to hear those languages live from you to be able to start to discern different sound elements. Another example, right? My daughter, when she was like 4 or 5 months, I noticed she was starting to grab things, which was great, but she would grab it with her fingers closed. So if she wanted to like grab her bottle and she wanted to like drink from her bottle, she would grab it like this, right? So what that's telling me is if I don't hurry up and try to program her brain to let her brain know like, hey, wait a minute, there's more to the finger here, right? There's the top part of the finger. Then later it will become harder to make that connection for the brain. So one thing I did when I noticed that is I simply just took a paintbrush, which I don't have one right here, but let's just pretend this is a paintbrush. And whenever I remembered throughout the day, I would just take the paintbrush and I would like stroke her fingers. Just as we're just like chilling or as I'm breastfeeding, I'll just stroke her fingers. So why do you guys think I decided to stroke her fingers? What is the purpose? What am I doing by stroking her fingers with a paintbrush?
Well, her fingers can open. I mean, her hands can like be like open.
Yeah, I'm telling the brain there's something here, make a connection. Like feel that and make a connection for it so that she can use her fingers. Right? There's more to the hand, there's more to the finger, like complete the picture. And so within about like 3 weeks, she was able to then open her hands fully and use her whole hand and her full fingers. But she may not have been able to do that if she never got the connection for it. So yeah, it was a tactile stimulus. Stimulus is exactly right. Now, eventually, synaptogenesis will slow down because as life progresses, there are not as many new things, right? So after the first 2 years, and you have to think about physical development too. The first 2 years of life, physically speaking, are the most rapid growth in your entire human life, right? So much is happening in those first 2 years. So that's another reason why synaptogenesis occurs, to try to keep up with the pace of newness. Once newness settles down, which is, around 3 and 4 years old, then your brain is finally going to get a chance to audit itself, and it's going to begin synaptic pruning. So pruning is basically getting rid of connections that are inefficient. So it'll go back and find like those finger connections and be like, whoa, we made like 10 million finger connections. I only need like 50,000. I only need 50,000 finger connections. So let's go ahead and prune all these other connections that were not that are either duplicates, inefficient, or we're simply not using it. Like maybe you used it once and you've never used it again. So you just prune it, get rid of it. And so notice the difference here between 2 years old and 4 years old, right? You've almost reduced connectivity by like 30%. And then by 6 years old, you're almost like at 50% of what you had at 2 years old. So all of this to say, again, that importance of the first few years of life, definitely the first year, but at most the first 2 years, you really want to be making as many connections for your kid as possible. You want to support them doing everything. So that also means, you know, when they reach for something and they want to put it in their mouth, there's a reason why kids put things in their mouth. Why do you guys think kids have like this fascination, like infants have a fascination with putting things in their mouth?
Because they want to know how it tastes like.
So part of it is taste, which is knowledge, right? That's knowledge. That's intelligence. What else? Understand the texture. So taste, texture, curiosity. Yeah. And building more connections. It's all about building connection. So what does this feel like in my hand? What does this feel like in my mouth? What is this going to be in my nose? What happens if I put it between my toes? All of that is the building block for intelligence. Why? Because this is the precursor to intelligence is language. And the only way you can create language is if you let a child explore and be curious and to interact with the world. So if you're around a kid, just talk to them 24/7. And if you're not sure what to talk to them about, literally just narrate everything you're doing. Be like, here I am folding laundry. I'm folding a blue shirt. I wish somebody else could fold this shirt, but no one else is here. It's just me. So it looks like it's just me and you folding shirts. And you just do that all day long. And you'll be building connections for that kid. They're going to be like a super genius if you do that. Have them touch things, have them put things in their mouth. All right. So that's brain stuff. So let's do different color here. Style number 1. Style 1 is secure attachment. You know your kid is secure if you're able to take them to a strange, weird place and they are confident enough to explore it because you are there with them. Okay, so a secure attachment looks like an explorative kid while caregiver is around. AKA they're semi-confident, confident kids. And just in case we need to reestablish this, in case you forgot, attachment occurs. Occurs when safety and trust is established consistently. And the critical period here is by 2.5 years old. Now, this is the only way to create a secure attachment with a child. That's it. Now, you don't have to be right. You don't have to provide correct treatment Like if a kid cries, you don't have to get it right. You just have to be there consistently. So baby cries, you just have to show up and hold them or talk to them, right? You're showing them, hey, I showed up, I am safe, and you can trust me to show up because I do this consistently. You don't have to be right? You don't have to know, like, do you need to be fed? Do you need a diaper change? Do you need to be held? Do you need to be burped? Do you need help farting? Because yes, kids need help farting. It's really annoying. You don't need to know what to do. You just have to be there. Now, all other ways, anything other than this leads to an insecure attachment. I'm going to do a different color here. So these three here are insecure attachments. And there are three types. There's anxious, there's avoidant, and there's fearful avoidant. And by the way, textbooks and Google and whatever, they all have different nomenclature. It's very annoying, and I acknowledge the annoyingness of it all. But this is the nomenclature that I choose to use because I think it's the most straightforward and easy to understand. So let's walk through these types, and then we'll take a break, you guys. Okay, because I know it's been a lot. So an anxious attachment style means or is created when there is inconsistent care. Meaning, right, a kid cries and sometimes you go right away, and sometimes it takes you 10 minutes, sometimes it takes you 20 minutes. Sometimes you feel guilty that you weren't able to be there, so you might disrupt them so you could be there because you want to build connection, right? But all that's doing is building inconsistent care with the kid. And so with that inconsistent care, they internalize that as caregivers are not to be trusted. Okay, so let's use the classic example. There's an experiment done called the Strange Experiment by Mary, I think her first name's Mary Ainsworth. And the way it works is that you take a child, you know, you and a caregiver go, or a child and caregiver go to like a play area. And let's start with the secure attachment, okay? If you have a securely attached child and you take them to a play area, do you think that they're going to explore the play area freely or not explore it? What do you guys think? Yeah, they're going to explore because they have confidence and they feel safe because their caregiver is with them. Now, if the caregiver leaves, what do you think the kid's going to do?
They're going to be secure in the fact that they know they're coming back.
Maybe. I mean, even if they trust, like, they're coming back,
They'll cry.
they'll probably still cry because they acknowledge. So why are they crying? They're acknowledging that safety has left the building. I trust that safety will come back, but I still feel uneasy because like they just left. Like I wasn't warned about it. So I'm going to cry. And you have to keep in mind, remember, there's no real upper level logic at this point. So you're working with like incomplete logic. Kylie, I see your hand.
I have to log off my computer because my computer's having connection issues, so I'm gonna
No
log.
worries. Okay, we'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you.
And Ivory makes a good point too. They're probably going to try to go look for them because they're confident enough to try to find out what's going on. But when the parent comes back or when the caregiver comes back, what do you think would happen then?
We'll run to them.
They'll probably run to them. And will they be easily soothed or not?
They'll be like, why did you leave me?
They'll be easily soothed, right? Now, easy, right? It could still take 10 minutes or so, but the idea is that you're able to actually calm the kid down, give them that love and comfort again, and then send them on their way, right? Once they kind of calm down, they're going to happily venture out again and play. And it's like they forgot the whole thing. Now let's use an anxious child, right? Somebody with inconsistent care. When the caregiver comes to the play area with them, are they going to explore freely or will they be hesitant?
Hesitant.
They're more than likely going to be very hesitant. And the hesitancy, you can see it because they're probably going to be clinging to mom or dad or caregiver, anybody, right? It could be grandma, it could be anyone, a nanny. They could be clinging, they're going to be clinging to the leg, right? Or they're going to be asked to be picked up. Pick me up, pick me up. Or they're going to ask for the caregiver to come with them. Like, I want to explore, but I'm scared, so come with me. They're hesitant. Or maybe they'll play, but they're going to play in like a small little bubble, really, really close to the caregiver, like at their feet. So if the caregiver leaves, what's going to happen to this kid?
Will freak out. Like, I knew I couldn't trust you.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it. They're going to freak out, right? So it's different, right? The first kid cries because they got scared, but they're like, okay, I know mom or dad or caregiver, nanny, grandma, they're going to come back, but like that, like they scared me for a bit. Like, I don't see them, where'd they go? But the second kid's like, of course, they left. I knew it was going to happen. I turned my back for 2 seconds. Why did I do that? No. And so this time when the caregiver comes back, what's going to happen with the kid?
The kid will not want to leave this side. They'll be like, I'm going to stay here. I can keep an eye on you.
So will they be easily consoled?
Nah.
No, this kid, right? You just like broke their trust yet again, right? They're like, but they want you, right? They're like, I want you because I recognize that I need some kind of comfort. But I don't know if I can trust you because you just abandoned me, right? And sometimes you'll even see that tug of war with a kid. I used to work in preschools, so I used to see that sometimes when a kid would get upset and they'd be like pulling the caregiver, right? And but also kind of like pushing, so it's like really fussy looking. And so the caregiver like doesn't know what to do. So they like put the kid down and then the kid loses it even more. Right. And the kid's like, no, pick me up, pick me up. And it's like, I was just holding you. I don't understand. Okay. That's an that's an anxious child now. Now, I mentioned in the beginning during the intro that this becomes the script for life, for all other relationships. So let's brainstorm what this person might look like in an adult relationship. So I see.
I say having abandonment issues and constantly being scared that their partner will leave.
Yep, scared of rejection, scared to be abandoned. That's all right. Fear of abandonment. Questioning their partner's feelings. Are they loyal to me?
Trust issues.
Do they love me? Can I trust them? Right? Now I see, not willing to compromise. So if we had to put that in one word, right, that would be a bit controlling. Because they feel like I need to have control, because I grew up with no sense of control. So now I have to control everything. I have to micromanage. I have to check in. Where have you been? Why are you not answering my phone calls? You're supposed to be home by now. Why are you not home right now? Are you cheating on me? What's going on? They're also self-sacrificing. Because they believe, why would they be self-sacrificing? What's the belief here?
They have low self-esteem or issues of self-worth and think by giving up more of themselves, it will make the person they're with want to stay
Mhm.
because they're in fear of being neglected or being abandoned like they were as a child.
You're absolutely right. Hit the nail on the head, Hassan. Great job. That's exactly right. They self-sacrifice because they think I need to attend to this person's needs because if I please them, so another way to say that is a people pleaser, right? If I please them, then they will stay. Great job, you guys. I think you guys are understanding how this one works. All right, let's move on to the next one then. So avoidant. Avoidant happens when there's no sense of safety. So why would a child, and remember this happens before 2.5 years old, roughly speaking. So how would a child conclude that there's no safety here? How would this happen?
The environment.
Abuse.
So there's abuse. What else could it be?
The environment, like their situation, like if the house is like not maintained well.
Yep. So if they're being neglected, right? So abuse, neglect. I feel like there's a third. Go ahead.
I think it's the same thing with abuse.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's in the same category. I was gonna say terrorize, but it's in the same category.
Yeah, that's like abuse.
Yeah,
That's definitely abuse. So yeah, if there's abuse, and it could be physical, it could be verbal.
abandonment.
Oh, that's the one I was looking at, right? Abandoned altogether. All of those create this avoidant type behavior because the child then learns you're not safe. I don't know if anyone's safe. And so therefore, like if I can't rely on my caregivers, who do I rely on? Who do I know is going to be there 24/7? Myself. Right? Can only rely on myself. I will avoid others to avoid pain. So coming back to the situation where you bring a kid to the playroom, are they going to explore or not explore? Will they explore or will they be hesitant?
I think they'll explore, but then won't care if their parent leaves.
Yep, that's absolutely right. They're going to explore and they don't care what happens. Right? Parent leaves and they're like, oh, you left. Okay. Now, by the way, that's externally. Internally, they're freaking out. Right? If they're because it reinforces that abandonment, right? Like you left me. But I expect it and I'm not going to let it show that you hurt me. Right? So even though I'm panicking inside, on the outside, I'm going to keep my cool. Like, oh yeah, whatevs. I'm just playing. Right? I'm tough. I got this. I'm confident. And even when the parent comes back, they're not going to care because they didn't care that they left. So as an adult, what could that look like? Who are these people in adulthood?
Nonchalant, like especially like boys, like nonchalant. They're very, to themselves,
Mm-hmm. Lone wolves.
like chill, but like it's, I don't know, yeah, like nonchalant, like
Like sticks
Yeah.
and stones, right? Like everything rolls off.
Yeah,
Nothing's a big deal.
they'll start to they'll start to like have trust issues and basically not trust anyone and be, I guess, a loner.
Yeah, they're a loner. They're emotionally unavailable. Closed off. No attachment to people, meaning what? If they don't attach, there is no what?
connection.
No pain.
Yep, no connection,
No affection.
I think it's
no
like,
commitment.
yeah, because like they're so used to like getting hurt and being alone that they don't want to make those connections because they're not gonna want to like deal with it.
Right. No trust. No vulnerability. They're gonna leave before there's any vulnerability involved. They don't necessarily have to be negative people. Not like negative in their outlook on life. They're negative towards people. Like they don't trust people. They're like, people hurt you. So like as a friend, if like they're your friend and you're like complaining to them, and you're like, oh, my boyfriend broke up with me. They're like, yeah, what do you expect? I don't know why you like.
They're
spent
very
so much
like
time.
logical people. Like they use
Yeah.
logic. They're not gonna use feelings. They just use logic.
Yeah, so with that logic, by the way, they will create false red flags as an excuse, as a logic to leave a relationship.
I feel like I'm like both.
It's funny you say that because we're gonna get to that.
Damn. Dang.
We are gonna get to that. Okay, now I want you to guys see some similarities because all of these groups, the insecure groups, they all also have one thing in common, which is low self-esteem, but they express their low self-esteem in different ways. How does the anxious person express their low self-esteem?
Constant reassurance.
Yeah, by looking for ways to be reassured. And sometimes they'll self-sabotage to reaffirm that belief, right? They'll create drama, and this is all subconscious, right? They're not like, oh, I think I want to wake up today and create a lot of drama. Subconsciously, they will create drama in the relationship so that the person breaks up with them, which reconfirms their belief, I'm not lovable, people leave me in relationships, right? I got abandoned again.
I feel like I'm in therapy right now. This
You're welcome. The second person, right, avoidant, also has low self-esteem, but it expresses in a different way. Their self-sabotage is that creation of red flags, right? As someone gets near and someone, like they're afraid that they'll look like a wolf in sheep's skin, right? Like someone comes near, they're like, uh-oh, they're gonna know who I am and they're gonna get too close, they're gonna hurt me. So before they hurt me, I'm gonna hurt them. And oh, I found a false red flag. The false red flag is they eat the cream part of the Oreo without eating the cookie part of the Oreo. That's a psycho person, and so I need to break up with them.
Oh my god, that's honestly so true.
Is this making sense, you guys?
Babies,
Yes.
like toddlers, are just like adults.
Wait,
Yes.
can you repeat that last part?
About the self-sabotage?
No, the thing you just said after that.
The cookie? So
Yeah.
like I said, like you could create, I was just making that up, right? Somebody might say, hey, that person eats the cream part of the Oreo without eating the cookie part of the Oreo. Therefore, they're psychotic and I can't be with them, so I need to break up. which like doesn't make any sense at all. They just find a fault. Right.
So like if you're like a both type of person, you do that, and then you're also like the anxious.
So
You're like
let's,
actually just like
Yeah.
mentally ill. Because
do you guys see what this last one is called? Fearful avoidant. Fearful, another word for anxious.
Yeah, so basically when you get neglected, it also causes fear.
Yeah. So this last person here is somebody who got inconsistent messaging. So not inconsistent care per se, as far as timing goes. So the anxious person, they got care, they got love, it was just inconsistent. The fearful avoidant person got inconsistent messaging, meaning that they had caregivers who were on two different spectrums. And by the way, I'm this person. So for my situation, as an example, my mom was secure, or at least she provided secure attachment for me. She was consistently there. She provided comfort. She provided safety, and I can trust her. And even till this day, I trust my mom. But my dad was avoidant. He didn't want to deal with me, and he'd be explosive. He would like yell. He had a very short fuse. This creates a lot of confusion for a kid, because remember, kids don't have logic. They can't sit there and be like, oh, I can see this situation, I can analyze it, and it looks like mom is using one style and dad is using the other style. Mom has the healthier style, so I'm gonna go with mom, and I'm just gonna ignore dad. Right? They can't logic that. All they have is their own emotional experience right now. So when a kid receives inconsistent messaging, what that means is they don't know what to feel. They're confused. And it can look like having delayed emotional responses. Okay, so we love some daddy issues. In that situation, let's keep it consistent, right? In that situation where you take the kid to the play area, what would a kid who's fearful avoidant do? Will they explore, or will they be hesitant?
Hesitant.
Anybody agree or disagree?
I think they'll be hesitant, but they'll explore, but they'll want to stick with their like like the mom or the parent that they feel like more closer to,
Yeah.
or someone that they are comfortable with. They'll stay with them, but they would want to explore as well.
Yeah. So this is the it depends. It depends. It depends on who they're with, which caregiver, which style, and it depends on their analysis of the situation. So these are my overanalyzers. Shout out to my overanalyzers in the group. Analyzing the situation, right? Is this a place where I can feel safe? Hey, it's me, surprise. Right? Do I feel safe? I'm going to explore, and I'm going to be confident. And you're going to, like, these kids can really look confident.
Yeah, it's giving me
Right?
vibes.
Yeah. But sometimes they're so not confident, right? They're not sure. They're like, I'm not sure about this. I have to second guess myself. I have to consult with somebody. Like, let me consult with my parent, or let me consult with this other kid, or let me just feel it out and see what's happening. So in adulthood, where are my people at? What?
We just fake it till we make it.
Right. This is totally fake it till you make it.
It's called self-improvement, but
yeah, baby
if
steps.
that even works.
Baby steps. So what do they look like? Who are these people?
These people are me.
It's me, surprise.
Wait, can you go a little bit more in depth about fearful avoidant? So you're saying they don't know what to feel. So they're getting both sides
Yeah.
a coin, basically. They're getting, let's just say they do something and they get mom's version and dad's version.
Yeah.
So they don't really know what's actually going on.
Yeah. They're not sure.
And this leads to like, I could guess, like, not sure what path to take.
Yeah. And so what will happen in their future relationships is it will depend on who it, their life is a life of it depends. Actually, these are the people that songs are written about. So like, you know, the Katy Perry song, you're hot, then you're cold, you're yes, then you're no. Like that's these people. Or Justin Bieber, you know, the what do you mean when you want to say yes, but whatever it's no. What is this, the lyric? Hold on.
What if like two, like, okay, let's say like a fearful avoidant and like an avoidant are in a relationship. Do you think that just wouldn't work?
In which avoidant and who?
A fearful avoidant and then like an avoidant.
So here's what happens, right? The fearful avoidant person molds to whoever they're with.
Oh my gosh! I'm so sorry if I scream, but I just literally just got like, I just feel like I'm in a therapy session right now.
Because it depends. It depends. They're going to overly analyze and overly think, and they're going to overly behave. And like, they're going to follow like a script of what they think it should be. This is why they have delayed emotional responses, because they're not
Oh,
sure
same.
yet, right? They're like, I gotta see.
My
Like,
sister, I'm always like, that's my sister is like, why you so cold-hearted? Why you show emotion less? I'm like, what do you mean?
right?
I need to take my time.
Like, I swear I have emotions, right? I swear I
I just
do.
like don't know how to express them, but like I have emotions.
True.
Yeah.
And like I don't know how to, but then like I overanalyze like every situation, especially in my relationships, like, and then like I don't know, like this is like weird.
Yeah. So I love what Antonia wrote here too. It's like you have a hard time being vulnerable. Sometimes you people please. Sometimes people don't know what's wrong with you. It looks like your mind is chaos. Because why? Because now you've molded both. You have both tendencies. You can be anxious, which means you can people please, but you can also be avoidant, meaning you can't open up.
Yeah, and then you hide your emotions, like you don't
Yeah.
like show, and then that's how people think, oh, you have no emotion. It's just
Right.
you don't show it. You have a hard time showing it, or you just
So you
don't
look like a
trust
cold
people.
person.
Yes, you look
Right.
like a cold-hearted person with no
Yeah.
heart and no feelings.
Yeah.
It's so
I feel
hard.
like it takes me like 24 hours to process my emotions.
Me too.
And you're just not
Maybe
sure,
48.
right?
Like, and even then, I'm still like, I don't know, it could be anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every day is like different, and like it depends on how someone treats
It
you. Like,
just depends.
it just is
Right.
never the same. Like one day can be super good, and like the next day you're just like flip a switch. You know, I'm like, am I like
Honestly.
bipolar? But I know I'm not.
Right. No, I know. And it can look very confusing for your partner, especially depending on who your partner is. So
No,
my
exactly.
husband's anxious. So he's a little more clingy. He's like super clingy, actually. And on some days, right, where like I feel a little clingy too, it works out because we both like cling to each other, and then we're vulnerable and we share our feelings and how was your day and life and this and and all cuddle, cuddle, cuddle. And then the next day, his clinginess is so overwhelming. And I'm like, you need to stop. Or I need my space. Like I need to leave. Sometimes I'm like, I need to leave the house because I just can't handle you because it's too much emotion. And when you stop and think about it, you've been like that your whole life. Like I even remember as a child, when my parents would want to give me like hugs and kisses, sometimes I would tell them, I'm all out of kisses, and you know, you can deposit some in the bank for later, but I don't have anything in the bank right now. Even as like a 4-year-old, I was like, the bank is closed, no more kisses.
I feel like I'm like clingy with my relationships, but in like other ways. But I know I'm also like a fearful avoidant, but I know I'm both, but then I feel like I act more clingy towards like that type of stuff. But I think it's just the attachment.
Yeah, well, it depends on the person you're with and who they bring out of you. Right. So if you're with an avoider, that will bring out your clinginess. And if you're with an anxious person, it will bring out your avoidant.
Oh my God.
And by the way, so we tend to, I'm not not talking about fearful avoidance right now. I'm talking about the avoidance and the anxious people. For some reason, anxious people love finding avoidant people, and avoidant people love finding anxious people. And those two people are like, I shouldn't say the worst for each other, but emotionally, they are the worst for each other. Because one wants to run away and not commit, and the other wants to overcommit. Yeah, oil and water. So I'm not saying they can't work out and it's doomed, but I'm just saying it's a very rocky road.
Very challenging.
It's very challenging.
See, I don't need therapy. I just need this class.
And this is
Yeah,
all
I'm
because of
paying
how we're
for it.
treated. Yeah, this is all because of how you're treated in the first 2 years of your life. Fun times. Fun stuff, right? You're like, wow, thanks. You know? And okay, you want to make this even worse? So this is, we've been talking about like adult relationships, but this is all relationships, right? So imagine now that you become a parent, and now you're in the parent seat, and now you have to parent a child. And children are naturally emotionally clingy and emotionally needy, like they have needs, right? And so if you're an anxious person as a parent, what is that going to look like? It's going to look like you being so scared to lose your child. You don't want them to die, because if they die, that means they left you. And I'm not saying you're consciously thinking about this. This is in your subconscious script. So that's going to turn you into an over checker, an over worrier, and over like, don't climb that thing, you're going to fall down. And subconsciously, the rest of the sentence is, and if you fall down, you might break your neck. And if you break your neck, you die. And if you die, you're no longer with me.
But children have to be able to explore in order to create secure attachment.
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
Just never having children.
And if you're an avoidant person and you had a child, that child screaming and crying is like too much for you. It's like builds up as like an emotional like and so what do? You're like, I want to be a good parent, I want to be there for them, but I can't emotionally handle this. I want to run away because this is emotionally stressful, and I want to avoid pain, and I run away from pain. This is definitely pain, it's emotional pain. Here's an iPad, kid, get away from me. See how that can happen? That's just, I'm not knocking on iPad, I'm showing you how this can be a result of too much emotional boiling up. And if you're a fearful avoidant parent and you've got this child and it's take your pick on the day, right? You battle both. It's the worst of all worlds. You're battling that anxiety of keeping them alive, and you're battling the stress, the emotional stress of wanting to run away from them. And I'm speaking from experience because as a mother, I both want to run away from my child and never look back. And I also want to protect her from everything in the world and make sure that she's like secure and safe. It's so emotionally exhausting. It's like, it's really hard. And this is why it's hard to be a parent. Okay. Be the rich auntie. So yeah, guys, this is rough stuff. This is really rough stuff. So how do you overcome, right? That's like the next natural question in the progression is like, okay, first of all, how do I make sure, like, I want to be secure. So how can I fix myself? Yeah, so therapy, right? Go to therapy, but that's expensive. But yes, I mean, the best possible thing you could do to fix yourself is to go to therapy, work on those scripts from childhood, work on reversing the scripts. There's a concept called reparenting yourself. So it's kind of like assuming the role of your perfect parent and going back to those painful moments and being the parent you wanted or you needed. Okay. And this is not to say you should like that this comes synonymous with hating your parents, right? You can be in one of these and still love your parents. It has nothing to do with love. All right.
This class is really making me realize that I need therapy.
Me too. I always tell myself I don't need therapy, but now
No, we all
No.
kind of need it. We
guess
all
I
kind of
do.
need
I-
it.
Big time. I need it.
Yeah, no, for sure. Everybody needs some therapy. But if you can't get yourself to therapy because it's too expensive or you don't have the time commitment, or
You can
you're
just come to this class, you know.
you can, this class can help, but the way you kind of fix it is so there's two other ways to fix it. The fastest of the other two ways, but the hardest, is to find a person who has a secure attachment and be in a relationship with that person. But that's like hard to do, hard to find, right?
You're like 1%.
It's like you
'cause
look
you can
secure.
never know. You can never know.
How do you know somebody has a secure attachment, by the way, in adulthood? Because we didn't really make that arrow, right? So let's go to that for a second. What do these people look like in adulthood, the secure people? What does that even look like? No idea.
Let me guess. You can always go to them to have a conversation.
I mean,
I don't know. I've never
Okay.
met one.
so communicative, yeah, communicative of something specific, communicative of something that starts with a B.
Behavior?
B-O
Bonding?
B-O-U
Boundaries.
boundaries. They have and they keep healthy boundaries and they're communicative of it. And
What's like the definition of that though? That's like, because like who knows these days? Like you know what I mean?
we'll get to that, by the way, when we get into adolescence and adulthood. So we'll have a whole class about boundaries, don't you worry. Okay, but the main thing here is that they know what their boundaries are. They're confident to some, I'm not saying they're overly confident. They have a healthy amount of confidence and a healthy amount of self-esteem. So they're not necessarily most assured, like they're not arrogant, but they're not necessarily low self-esteem, right? They have their ups and downs, like any normal human being has ups and downs. They'll have times where they doubt themselves, but for the most part, they could snap out of things and they're like, no, I know I got this. I know I can do it. I know I'm lovable. I know I'm a good catch. I know this, and that. Like they have healthy scripts about their life. That is a secure person.
Can you be like a secure person and have like fearful avoidance?
No.
So these three avoidance
Yeah.
are only in like some, like a handful of people or most people?
Well, the last time I read statistics on it was forever ago, by the way. So I don't have updated statistics. Oops. How do I change the color of this? I don't know the updated statistics. The last time I read the statistics on this was like, when was it? Like, I don't know, 10 years ago. So it's been a while. So 10 years ago, 70% of people were a secure attachment, leaving the 30% of us as insecurely attached. I would believe, or I would hypothesize that that number has lowered significantly since then. So I
would say like a good, well, like maybe like 30% of people are secure. I don't want to say 70%.
Yeah, I would say that number is probably close to being flipped right now. That would be my best guess. Just based on what I'm observing in my, not just like, not me, I'm saying what I observe, because you have to realize I have hundreds of students every semester. And over the years, I've witnessed my students becoming more and more insecure and more anxious, right? So yes, that is anecdotal evidence. I can't say for certain, but given the number of people that I talk to and I see and just my observation, I believe that that number is way lower than it used to be. Aisha says, I read once when people leave them, they don't question whether it had anything to do with them. That's another way you know it's a secure person, right? They don't do unhealthy rumination. They don't think about it too much. They're like, didn't work out. And sometimes relationships don't work out.
Bro, I wish I could be like that.
Right? They don't overanalyze it. They don't go back through the good times and be like, oh, but we had such good times. Right?
Honestly, that'll be way easier.
Yeah, it's more of like kind of like a clean cut. They just recognize like, you know what, we drifted apart or just wasn't a healthy relationship. And they duck
Yeah,
out.
it is what it is. Life
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. So if you can find yourself a secure person, the trick is you'll have to be in a relationship with them for 2 years in order to undo your mess. So if you can find this person and stick with them for 2 years, you're cured.
2 years.
2 years. The problem is that you'll either self-sabotage it in some way,
2 years. Oof.
or they'll realize that the relationship is toxic and they'll cut you out.
And also the problem is that the percentage of those people
Are lowered. Yeah.
are lower now. So it's rare to find them.
Yeah, it's very
So
rare.
that's the
So
problem.
if you can't do therapy and you can't find the secure person, the only other thing you can do is to build awareness of who you are and to catch yourself in the act, right? So if you're the anxious person and you have that strong, like, push to check on somebody, right? There's like a naggy little voice in your head being like, they didn't text you back. They didn't call you back. You need to call them. You need to text them. Or, you know, why are they not home exactly at 5:30? You need to recognize that and be like, aha, I'm noticing it. Be like, I see it. And you have to be like, okay, for 24 hours, can I live without doing this thing? For 24 hours, can I not check on them? The avoidant people, right? For 24 hours, can I not create a red flag? Can I just, or when you do create a red flag, be like, is this a real red flag or a fake red flag? And could I live with this red flag for 24 hours?
I think it's also a lot of self-work. Like with me, I'm currently like doing like because I was in a relationship and then I kind of got into another one. I think that's just because of my like attachment.
Yeah.
But it's like a different one. Like now it's like the avoidance. That's what like the situation I'm with. But like that's just him. I can't change him. But
Yeah.
with me, I can change the way I look at all the negatives and have to stop looking at the negatives and look at the positives of things.
Yeah.
And I've been like journaling and stuff and working on myself.
Journaling
and,
helps. Yeah.
It does a lot. And like when you like go over your days and see like what was good and what was bad.
Yeah.
And like, kind of like figuring out like, okay, like what stressed me out today? What can I do better tomorrow?
Yeah.
I think if you keep that up, you can really like change your habits of the way you think about certain things.
No, totally. You're right. So journaling helps, keeping gratitude, like practicing gratitude helps. Like that means every day, for instance, thinking of 3 things that happened that you're grateful for that day. Even if at first you start simple, like, hey, I'm grateful that, I was able to eat today, which seems simple, but it's something. Keep doing that consistently helps to program your brain to expect good things to happen. So that's one way you can like overcome your fear. Another way is to ask yourself where the evidence for something is, right? So when you get that feeling like scared, like somebody's going to reject you or they're not going to love you, when you start getting those like messages, to take like a step back and be like, wait, but where is the evidence for that? Where is the evidence that they don't love me anymore? Like the hard evidence. Where is the evidence that they're going to leave me? Am I inventing this evidence or is it in my face? Where is the evidence that they can't be trusted? And sometimes just asking that question helps you work through it.
And also, not only about fear of abandonment in relationships, but also like like my mom and my dad, they're divorced and they've
Yeah.
been divorced since I was like, I don't know, 5 or something. So it's also maybe that also has affected like some people, you know, their parents are not together and you can
Yeah.
still remember that. Like a child remembers like everything they've been through. And especially when they see like both their parents divorcing
Yeah.
at such a young age, that also, you know, that fear of abandonment also, you know, is
Yeah.
affecting me.
Yeah. No, it's true though. You know, and you know, people say, and there are, like, I even had a friend who had an amicable divorce, right? So there are rare circumstances where people divorce very pleasantly in a very healthy way. But even then, there's always an irreversible effect on the child. Always. I mean, I'll take that back. I said, well, on the child, right? I was gonna say, unless you got divorced and your kids are like adults, right? It's not gonna really affect them anymore because they're like, I'm an adult, I don't care what you do. Right? But on a child, it will always have an effect. Even if you remain like the best of friends.
And so how do you fix that? Like, how do you like move on from that, you know, abandonment? Like if it affects my life, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I don't know how to like move on from that.
Therapy.
See, I told you.
Really? Like, do I really
I
have to do
told
that?
you.
Like, talk to someone? Like, can I just like
No,
avoid
I
it
mean, look, you
forever?
guys, you can do it yourself, but it's so hard to do. And that's why I'm like therapy. Therapy is like the shortcut. Why? Because sometimes you won't even allow yourself. Okay, let me give you an example. Okay. Obviously, I'm in the psychology world. I understand many concepts in psychology. I understand like what to do. Right? Does that make sense to people? Who are like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, like anybody else, I got issues sometimes. And like a few months ago, I was feeling like super depressed, seemingly out of nowhere, right? I like fell into a slump. And I was trying to tell my friends about it. And they were all like, you're a psychology person, use your psychology. I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I think about that? Right. And even if I tried to use the stuff that I know, right, I'm just so much in my own head that I couldn't even do it right because my subconscious mind and my ego are blocking me from doing so. So even when I would take myself through an exercise to like feel my feelings, because sometimes you need to be able to feel your feelings so you can express them and let them go. I would do the motions and I would do the work. And my husband would even watch me do it. He's like, okay, just do it. And so I would do it. And he's like, wow, that had like 0 effect on you. I was like, I know, it doesn't work. So then I called a therapist and she legit did the same exact thing that I did on myself. But my subconscious mind understands she's the space that's meant for this, right? Therapy is meant for emotional release and understanding. So my subconscious and my ego were able to step aside and accept what she was doing. And then I was able to actually do the work and like, I wouldn't say instantly got over my depression, but like within like 2 sessions, my depression was like gone. But I couldn't do it on myself. It's like exceptionally hard to do.
I feel you. I literally feel you.
Okay. So I can give you guys all the tools in the world, but it's hard to do it on your own. Because why? Because here's the whole point. You don't trust yourself. So if you can't trust yourself, how can you make yourself step aside to give yourself help? And so that's where the therapist and like in therapy, you'll be like, wow, that was super obvious. Yeah, it is super obvious, but you need like a third party to help your ego step aside. Antonia says it only works when you feel comfortable and trust the therapist. And that's true too. 5,000%. So if you've been to therapy and it didn't work, more than likely it's that you did not feel comfortable with that therapist. You didn't feel vulnerable with them. Anytime you read any developmental textbook, Eric Erickson's going to show up. And the reason is that he created this kind of model of development that had to do with the social and emotional aspects of growing up. And the way Eric Erickson's model works is that with every stage of life, there is like a conflict, and this conflict needs to be resolved in order to have closure, or to like achieve that emotional period, if you will. Now, what's interesting about Eric Erickson's stages of development are that they're not how should I put this? They're not, I don't even know what the word would be. So you know how, for instance, in physical development, you have to be able to, walk before you can run, or you have to be able to sit before you can stand, and you just cannot progress until the thing before it is complete. I don't know what you would call that, like completion. For emotional, social development, you never have to complete a stage. So you might end up in a different emotional dilemma without having yet mastered the prior emotional dilemma. So a perfect example is what we've been talking about. So let me go ahead. I'm going to open up Eric Erickson's stages of development, and you guys can take a look at what I'm talking about, and maybe this will make more sense. All right. So these are Eric Erickson's stages of development. We already kind of touched on the first one, the trust versus mistrust stage, when we talked about attachment. And so Eric Erickson would say that the dilemma that needs to be solved here is, am I going to trust my caregiver or not? And as we discussed, right, if you do, then you're securely attached and you've kind of achieved closure with this emotional stage. And if you haven't, then you'll be insecure. And this emotional stage remains unfinished until you finish it one day. And so you can progress to the next stage of emotional life without having mastered the previous stage. Is this making a little more sense when I explain it in that way? So when we're talking about toddlers in Eric Erickson's world, we are on the second stage of development. And in this stage, the big dilemma here that needs to be resolved has to do with autonomy, meaning freedom, personal freedom, right? Am I able to freely explore and to have my opinions? Which sounds weird, right? Like, how would a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old have an opinion? If you've never been around kids, it sounds weird. But once children know how to talk, even before they know how to talk, they have very strong opinions. Speaking of which, my daughter's at the door. Yes, Ella.
I think they're too sticky, so I can't open it.
Okay.
I opened the other one, not this one.
What other one? You ate another one of this already? Well, you're only allowed to have one a day.
Oh, I just really want one more.
This could be a good practical place, right? We have exhibit A, who wants to eat the candy, but she's already had candy today. And so that is the rule, and that is the boundary. You can't give in, right? So Ella, I love you. But if you've already had this today, I can't give you another one. I know you really want one. I know, it's so yummy. I understand. You're hungry, is that the problem? Okay. So what could you eat that could help you with your hunger?
I don't know. for me like applesauce.
Applesauce is a good solution.
Can't reach it.
You can't reach it?
It's
What?
too high for me, and it's all the way up.
Where's Daddy?
He is sleeping on the floor.
Daddy's sleeping. Go figure. Be right back, you guys, because I gotta go grab her some applesauce because apparently Daddy is sleeping. So, BRB. Un momento.
It's fun, so I can save it for tomorrow.
Okay, put it back so you can save it for tomorrow, and I will get you some applesauce. Okay?
Mommy. I'll try that. I'll do it.
Oh, no. She didn't say she can't eat shit. She said she can't eat sweets. That's funny. That's hilarious. So back to Eric Erickson and toddler development. It is important for kids at this stage to be able to not only express their opinions, but to be given an opportunity to realize their needs and their independence and their opinions. So what does that look like in like real life? Right? It looks like the kid's gonna wake up and it's gonna be, 80 degrees outside, and they're gonna point to their snowsuit, and they're gonna want to wear a snowsuit and snow boots. And you're gonna look at the child and be like, hell no. You're gonna want to exert your, not just your authority, but you just know better, right? You're like, it is boiling hot outside for a snowsuit. So the answer is no. However, if we remember back to the beginning, they do not possess decision-making, logic, or judgment, right? So if you say no at this point and go against their need for independence and their need for an opinion, this is an opportunity for you to not only like, I shouldn't say ruin, deter. Not only are you going to deter their emotional development at this stage, you're also going to provide an opportunity for a tantrum. So let's talk about that first part. When you deter their opportunity for exerting their voice, the message you are sending to them, is that their voice does not matter and their voice cannot be trusted. So if their voice cannot be trusted, and this is the message that's being sent to them over and over and over again, they're going to begin doubting their own voice. And this is how we begin to lose our confidence and our own needs, wants, opinions. This is when we begin to be indecisive people. So if you're an indecisive person, more than likely it happened somewhere in your toddler years when you weren't given the freedom to have an opinion. And I guess this is like parenting 101. Maybe that's what the class should be called.
Yeah.
Well, only to a certain extent until we get into adulthood, right? And then it becomes how to survive adulting 101. And then death, right? How to survive being an adult, and then how do you die? But anyways, I digress. So it's super important to make sure that you support your kid or the kid and having those opinions. Let them learn life the hard way, so to speak. So the kid that wants to wear like a snowsuit in 80-degree weather, be like, you can still express to them. They won't understand it because they don't understand logic, right? You can express to them that this is a bad idea. And you should, only because you're building the script for later, right? So you should still say, hey, Bobby, you know, it's really hot outside and I really think you're going to be uncomfortable wearing this right now. And they're going to say, no. And that's when you say, okay, you've been warned. And you let them do it. And life will be the teacher because they're going to go out. It's going to be boiling hot and they're going to be uncomfortable. They're probably going to whine about it. They could even tantrum about it. And if you respond to the tantrum correctly, which I'll tell you how to do that, that will be the end of that. They'll maybe try something like that once or twice more, but eventually they're going to learn. They're going to make those connections. Yay for synapses. And they won't do it again. And that will be the end of that. And you could, if you're nice, if you want to be nice like Ivory, you will pack backup clothes to give them some respite. But if you're going to be a hard ass like me, you're going to let them suffer through it 5,000%. Antonia and I agree. Let them suffer, right? That's like and you know what? But there's a little bit of wisdom in letting and not bailing them out. There is wisdom in not bailing them out, because when you bail them out, you start letting them know, like, someone's always gonna someone's always gonna bail me out. When you don't bail them out, they start to begin to understand the process of, consequence and the process of decision making. So even though they won't have the ability to make long-term decisions until 12 years old, you are building the scaffolding for that, so that when 12 years old comes around and the connections are finally bridged, they're going to pick it up like this. It'll be like second nature for them because that scaffolding has been built for them. Okay. So it's very important that you guide them and let them have their freedom and talk them through. You can even, there are ways to not make your life miserable, in the sense of, like, for instance, like, why is the snowsuit even available in the closet if it's summertime? You know what I'm saying? So if you remove those altogether, you limit your own exhaustion and you reduce those types of fights. So it's also about being smart and understanding that this is the phase of life where they're going to have those opinions and they're going to want to express some independence. No, let me do it. I want to do it. I want to do it. Like, they want to use a knife to cut vegetables because they see you cutting vegetables. And they're like, that looks like fun. I want to do it too. Instead of getting into a fight of, no, you can't. This is sharp. This hurts. Get them a kid's knife. And then be like, sure, you can cut the vegetables too. Here's your kid's knife. Ta-da! Ta-da! So figure out the ways that you can adjust to support them in building that independence. However, there will be times where no matter what you do, they will break down, right? So the snowsuit situation, you go out, you let them have their snowsuit, and then they're going to get too hot. And they're going to be like, I'm hot. I'm hot. And you're like, yes, I understand you're hot. Now, don't say I told you so, by the way. Don't be like, aha, I told you so. Because that actually does not help. If anything, it only builds that doubt feature in their decisions again, or their ability to trust themselves. So you can say the I told you so in your head, right? You're like, oh, I saw this one coming. But then what do you do? Right. So before what do you do? Why then do tantrums happen? There are a few reasons. One is because you're going against their independence or their opinions. Number two is because they have a perceived need that is unmet. So who can give me an example of a toddler perceived need that could go unmet? Yeah, it's basically just not getting what they want. That's basically it. Right? Like that, my daughter coming in was a potential for that, but she's not really a toddler anymore, so she didn't blow out. But if she was a toddler, that would have been a potential. I want to eat this thing. And then mommy said no. Ah! All right. I want to jump off this 5-foot hill, but my dad won't let me. Ah! I want this toy. And grandma said no. I want to eat McDonald's and my parents won't let me. Like whatever it is, they perceive that it is a need. Because anything they want is a need to them because they don't have logic. Okay. So anything that pops into their head, I want this, becomes I need this. And if you're going to stand in my way, my need is now unmet. So that's how it begins. They usually want something they can't. You tell them no, it's the end of the world. And oh my God, by the way, toddlers will find the most ridiculous things. For instance, one time we were making muffins and my daughter was like, I want to watch the muffins. This is when she was like 2. She's like, I want to watch the muffins. So I turned on the oven light so she can watch the muffins. And then she started trying to open the oven door. And I was like, Ella, I know it looks so exciting that we have to keep the oven door closed. And she goes, no, but I want to go inside and be with the muffins.
Huh?
Yeah, she wanted to go inside the oven so she could be with the muffins.
Oh no.
Yeah. That's a no. It's cute, but like it's so like this is kids and their lack of logic and their lack of judgment, right? They can't rationalize the world. To her, it is totally unfair. Like I basically committed the worst offense on earth by not allowing her to go inside the oven to be with the muffins. And full-blown tantrum from there. Madness ensues. Yeah, Beryl, what's up?
So I have this cousin, right?
Yeah.
And when he was like a toddler, right? He used to be like so clingy to me. Like when I was leaving or coming back, he was like, don't go. But now when I go there, he's like, oh, why you here? And I'm like, you would just, what? Like, I always try to understand that. Like, he's like,
Yeah.
oh, you should go back home. Like, I'm your favorite person. Like, I try to understand that every single time.
That's
Like
so
now,
funny.
he just annoys me to the. I'm just like, don't come close to me. You're annoying me.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
I never
hilarious.
understood that.
How old?
He was like around 4 or 5, like around 4 or 5, 3. I'm just like I remember he was like he'll hold my leg and be like, "Don't go, just sleep here." And I'm like, I have to go to school.
Yeah.
And I always find a way to run away so I can come home. But now when I go there, he's like, "Ugh, why are you here?" I'm like,
He's protecting himself emotionally.
Yeah, I'm like, it's just 8 o'clock. I'm like, you're just 8 years old. Calm down.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
just here to
acted
visit.
like a teenager, right?
Yeah, I'm like,
get out
calm
my face.
down.
This is kids, man. This is kids. This is the joy of children. I get to the point with my 2-year-olds where they throw tantrums over the smallest things. I don't cry me a river. Yeah. So, okay. So what's happening and what do you do? So they have an unmet need. And so what part of the brain, when there's an unmet need, will get triggered? Antonia cracking me up.
Yeah, sometimes when my aunt's kids cry, I
Mhm.
start screaming just like they're screaming.
Yeah.
And
Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work, by the way. But it's not bad to have in your toolbox, right? Just throw a tantrum too and they'll be like, what the hell? But we'll get to that, okay? Let's just figure out how it works. So which part of the brain gets activated when a need is not met? what does it mean, right? What does it mean when a need is not met? Is that pleasant, unpleasant, happy, not happy, scary, great? Like, what is it? Yeah, it's triggering, especially to a child, because they don't have that logic piece to explain what's happening to them. So when a need is not met, it will trigger the emotional part of the brain, the fight, flight, freeze, surrender, play dead response. And the first time this gets activated, your brain's going to randomly select one of the responses. Usually the first, your brain prefers the fight response because it's the most like aggressive. And so remember, the emotional part of the brain is meant for survival. So if you're aggressive and that aggression works, then your brain learns this is my go-to response. Okay, so unmet need. This is a perceived threat for your brain. And so you're going to activate the fight, flight, freeze, surrender, play dead. As a toddler, this will be a tantrum because it's an overexplosion. See, toddlers and kids in general, but especially toddlers, are their emotion, because the emotional brain is pretty much the only thing that's like fully functioning, like fully matured. All of their emotions are like 5,000%. So when they're happy, it's like 5,000% happiness. When they're silly, it's 5,000% silly. When they want to cuddle, it's like 5,000%. So when they are upset, it is also 5,000% upset. Or at least that's what it looks like to an adult. That's like that is our default emotional state. And the limbic system, the emotional brain, has a direct connection with our body. So when our fight, flight, etc. response is triggered, the body also gets triggered. There's going to be a physical energy hormone, like a whole splash of hormones that are going to flood the body to help the body get ready to survive. The problem is that a child's body is really tiny. Like they're tiny humans. And so this energy looks really intense to an adult because we're not that way, right? When we get upset, we feel it, and we also have the same emotional energy that comes into our body, but we have a lot of body and we also have a lot of impulse control to be able to kind of mute that down into a societally appropriate response. But children don't have that. So when they're upset, it is a full body experience. So much so that literally they might not know what to do with this energy. So not only are they crying, they could be screaming, they could be flailing their arms, they could be hitting, they could be punching, they could be kicking, they could be biting. A lot of people ask, why do kids bite? They're not maliciously trying to harm others. They're not like, oh, I think it's a good idea for me to bite you because I hate you. That they're not even thinking. There is no thought. There is no logic. All that is there's a lot of energy in here and I need to do something with that energy and I don't know what to do, but for some reason it feels like a good idea for me to bite something. That's why some kids hit their heads on the floor. Yeah, and some kids will, like, basically it's self-harm, right? They'll hit their heads on the floor or they'll bang their heads on a wall, right? It's not logical to harm yourself. Like, it's actually not a good idea to do that. But they just have so much energy, like emotional energy, they don't know what to do, right? These TikToks with kids who throw hands has me thinking otherwise. It depends how old the kid is, Antonia. It depends. But I'm talking like a 2, 3, sometimes 4-year-old. So I'm talking like the 1.5 to 4-year-old range. Okay. They'll not know what to do with all of this energy. So now comes the part of, okay, so then what do we as adults do to stop this process and to maybe prevent this from happening too many times? Because you're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to get rid of it. Like, unless you like removed all triggers from the world, but that's impossible to do because you can't anticipate what the kid's going to get upset about because there's no rhyme or reason to it. Right. So as another example, like, let's say you have two kids and they're at daycare, and then one kid takes another kid's toy. Well, when I take the toy, like I'm the toddler, I took a kid's toy and now I'm holding the toy. What do I think about this toy? As a toddler, what am I thinking? Yeah, it's mine. This is my toy. Right? That's my logic. Toy is in my hand, therefore it's my toy. Other kid starts to cry. I don't have the ability for empathy, so I'm going to look at that kid confused. Why is that kid crying? I don't know. Now, I can still like feel the sadness, like I can identify that sadness, right? Be like, oh, that kid is sad. But if you try to tell that toddler, yeah, they're sad because you just took their toy, they're gonna be like, what? First of all, this is my toy because it's in my hands. And second of all, I don't understand why that kid would be upset by that. But you wouldn't anticipate any of that happening, and there's no way for you to prevent all that, and thus you can't even prevent tantrums. So let's write our list. Yeah, first of all, it's my toy, so I don't even know what you're talking about. So how to, let's see, deal with tantrums. 101. So the first thing you got to do is remove the trigger. So if, you know, okay, my daughter, the trigger for her, like she couldn't go, she was upset because she couldn't go into the oven with the muffins. And now she has a tantrum because I told her no. What is the trigger in this case that I need to remove her from?
The oven?
Yeah, the oven. Because as long as she's looking at the oven, she's gonna, it's like continuously pushing the button. Like, oh, trigger, trigger. Mom said no, muffins, oven, muffins, oven, muffins, oven. It's like, ah. So if you're trying to like calm a kid down or talk to them, but the trigger is still present, you're basically talking to a brick wall. So you have to remove the trigger first and foremost to get anywhere with this kid. So that's number one. That might mean making tough decisions for you. Like if you're driving and you drive past McDonald's and your kid's like, I want McDonald's. And you're like, no, we can't have McDonald's. What's the trigger now?
We have food at home.
Huh?
We have food at home. That's what my what's it called? My dad always told me when I was a kid. I was like, I want McDonald's. I want McDonald's. They'd be like,
Yeah.
oh look, we just passed it. It's
Yeah.
okay. We have food at home.
We have food at home, right? But now you're upset. So what's the
Yeah.
trigger right now?
It's like, it's okay. I mean, honestly, I'll just tell them McDonald's is not good for you. Let's go home.
So here's the first problem, right? The first problem is that people try to use the things that toddlers don't have, right? So let's make another list of don't do.
Oh, like did you have money?
Okay. Toddlers don't have logic. Right? They're not going to understand, we don't have the money, or they're not going to understand we have food at home. That's logic. They don't have that. Right? People also try to calm down by using empathy. Right? Like take that daycare situation where a kid takes a toy from another kid and you try to be like, how do you think you would feel if somebody took your toy away? They're like, F you, I don't know. I don't have empathy, so I don't know what you're talking about. Right? And maybe with practice, they can come up with the right answer, but they're not going to understand it. Right? So if they've been through that situation before, they'll be like, I would feel bad, because that's the correct answer. That's what you told me before. But they don't actually understand the process of feeling bad because of that. So in that McDonald's situation, okay, McDonald's, so it's a trick question. McDonald's was the triggering event, but the trigger that remains, that lingers behind is the parent, right? And the car ride, the parent and the car ride. So that means that you'll need to pull over. Like if you want it to stop, you're gonna have to pull over and you're gonna have to get out of the car. So you have a decision to make. Are you willing to do that? Because if not, you're just gonna have to write it out. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that a tantrum physiologically in the body. So when fight or flight is triggered, and this is true of everyone, adults included, when fight or flight is triggered, it is a 20-minute process. It is a 20-minute process. So you're either going to have to go through these steps or you're going to have to write it out for 20 minutes. Okay, so first step, if you're going to go through the steps, is to remove the trigger. Sometimes that means doing the hard thing like pulling over. Second step is to get on their level or lower. When you get on their level or lower, you're removing a threat and you're communicating that you are a safe space. Because when you're up here towering over them, you're like this tall, scary monster. But when you're at their level or even lower, you're not intimidating anymore. And you're signaling subconsciously that you've created a safe space between you. The third thing is to recognize that the energy and the key is in the body. So at step 2, by the way, you can attempt to talk. And this will be kind of like your test. Like if you're at their level and you attempt to talk to them, but you can't get through, that means it's too late. It's already in their body. Now, if you get on their level and you're like, hey, I understand you're upset, and they're kind of listening and they're kind of able to talk to you, then you're in a good position to continue to talk and try to kind of talk them like into calmness. Like, I'm here for you, I'll support you, whatever. But if you try to talk to them and they're and they're hitting and they're smacking or they're playing dead, you know, when kids let their body go limp and then you try to pick them up, but they're so heavy because they're limp and you're like, what the hell? When did you get so heavy? Right? Then you have to recognize that the energy and the key to this is all in the body. So you're going to use their body as a distraction. And I'm going to put a little asterisk here because you want to be careful about this word distraction here. And so I'm going to say it in here for the don't use distractions that are outside of the body, AKA, or as an example, don't use bribes, toys, the sky. Like they'll be like, oh, look at the weather, you know, look over there. Don't use like that kind of misdirection. And the reason is that sends the message to them that their feelings don't matter. If I can just distract you, your feelings are not valid. But if I'm distracting you using you, then I'm still making it about you. So what would that look like? It would look like either helping them to dispel out the energy. So if they're all like frantic, that might be being frantic with them, right? So like jumping with them, like taking their hands, be like, let's jump, 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 or kick, let's kick the air, kick the air, kick the air, or let's stomp. We're monsters, we're dinosaurs, stomp, 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 stomp. It could be even one thing I've tried with my daughter is giving her paper to rip. Right? I'd be like, I see you have a like always narrate and always acknowledge, right? I see you have a lot of energy. It makes sense that you're angry. Would you like some paper to rip for your anger? And they're usually like, yeah. And my daughter, I gave her paper. She's like, she rips it with such rage. She's like, oh, I'll show you. She's like, rah, rah. But usually, by the way, what happens is after the first like 3 tears, she then like has fun with it because she had a place to put her energy, and her energy is leaving the body. So then it's kind of like a fun activity. She's like, hey, this is cool, right? So you can just help them to dispel out the energy, or you can use their body as a distractor. Which I kind of wrote. So you can say things like, where is your belly button? Where did your toes go? Why is your shirt, and insert wrong color. Right? You're like, hey, they're like wearing a white shirt. You're like, your shirt is purple. They'll be like, what? Where's your belly button? They'll be like, I have a belly button, right? By keeping it in their body, you're helping to redirect the energy to a certain point. And this helps the energy leave. And once the energy leaves, then you can like revisit talking to them. Because you'll notice it. You'll notice the body kind of like not shut down, but like calm down. You'll notice it, like the volume has come down, and then you say, you acknowledge by acknowledging. Hey, I know you were upset or angry or whatever it is. It makes sense. I would feel that way too. What can I do to help? Right? You pulled over, you got out of the car, you got at their level. They're angry because you couldn't have McDonald's. And so getting down on their level, instead of saying, hey, but we have food at home, which tells them indirectly, your feelings don't matter. Stop complaining, you're not valid. Getting down on their level and helping them, like first helping them get the energy out. And then when they're calm, saying, I know McDonald's is so exciting. And I know that you were looking forward to it. And I'm so sorry, we really can't go today. And I know how that's disappointing. And maybe there's something else, like maybe they've had a series of no that day, right? So the conversation might change based on their life, right? Be like, hey, I get it. I said no to a lot of things today. It makes sense that you'd be angry because it's like one more no. I get that. What can I do to help you? I want McDonald's. We can't have McDonald's today. Maybe we can find a food that we both agree on that's good for you today. Can you help me think? So then involve them in the solution. Can you help me think of a food that maybe we have at home that you'd be okay with eating? Because I really want to give you McDonald's, but it just can't happen today. Or when my daughter wanted to go to the oven, right? First, you calm her down, get the energy out of her body. I had her rip some paper. And Ella, I know that it's so exciting when things are baking in the oven and you just want to be close to it. Like it's really cute. You want to be close to something that you made. but the oven is really hot. The oven is really, really hot. So what I'm doing by saying that sentence is I'm scaffolding a script for later in her life. She's not going to understand it now, but I have to like slide that in. The oven is really hot and we can't go inside. Is there another way you could be with the food? Or is there another feeling that will make you feel excited? Can we think of a solution? Would it help if I turned on the oven light? Would it help if after the muffins are done, you can cuddle them after that? Can you help me think here what would be good? And I know it sounds really involved, and I know it sounds ridiculous, especially if you have like a 1.5-year-old or a 2-year-old. It seems like they don't have the capacity for these kind of conversations. But I promise you, if you treat them like a human being and give them love and support, they will absolutely be responsive to this kind of communication. I mean, you just saw it now with my child, right? She came in, she wanted to have that fruit snack. I told her, hey, you already had one fruit snack today, and I can't let you have this fruit snack, but what else can we do? And she was like, I'm just hungry, right? So it didn't even have to be the food snack. She was about to be really disappointed, right? She was disappointed. She's like, but I really want this. It's like, I understand that you really want this. It is so yummy. I get that. You can't have it. What can you do? Applesauce. She thought of that herself. Why? Because you build the scaffold in from early. And I got her the applesauce and she's fine. This is going to make jobs, it will make your job so much easier, you guys. It will make your job once you understand that it's all just about the brain and the body has this energy. Don't use logic, don't use, judgment or decisions. Don't use any adult thing. Just make it about the emotion, make it about acknowledging it, and make it about the energy of it. And that's it. And if you respect them enough to do that, you're going to inevitably reduce the tantrum, because they will feel confident in providing solutions. So just like this moment with my daughter could have been a potential breakdown moment, it wasn't.